Richie Beno, I think, once said that captaincy is 90% luck and 10% hard work.
Ganguly at Greg Chappell, man. What are you talking about?
See the fitness of these players. I mean, Umesh Yadav, he's got six-pack abs, man. I mean, Rahul Dravid getting picked in a T20.
Yeah.
That happened.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of Silly Point. As you all know, the great MS Dhoni has finally decided to retire from international cricket. So our short tribute to him, fantastic player, amazing captain. And because of that, I think his career, that got us thinking who during his time and the time that we've actually started playing cricket, watching cricket over the past 15, 20 years, who have been the best international captains across all formats. With some great names come up, but I think at the end of the day, there were two that we really narrowed down to. Ironically, both of them were from India. Sourav Ganguly, the predecessor to MS Dhoni, and obviously the man himself, MS Dhoni. So we have Uzi and Gaurav to discuss their thoughts on who the best captain is. And just before we start the discussion, as always, please do like, share, and subscribe to our channel, and let us know any interesting topics that you'd like to discuss. We would have liked to discuss the ongoing England-Pakistan Test match, but there isn't much to discuss anyway, except for rain and poor frustrating cricketing rules around delays and lunchtime and this and that. But we can do that for another day when we're all feeling much more angry. But in the spirit of Mr. MS Dhoni, let's start off. G, I can see you're feeling very patriotic today.
Yes, I actually am. Just to give our viewers an idea, I'm wearing my India jersey. Mind you, this is from the 2007 World Cup. So around the time when MS Dhoni's name as a captain was actually developed, that's when the world was able to see.
Yeah, India played quite well in the 2007 World Cup, I recall.
Yeah, of course.
The ODI World Cup.
Not ODI, the T20 World Cup.
Pakistan's only silver lining in that World Cup after losing to Ireland.
Yeah, so I mean, there are two things. First thing is this from 2007, so I'm still proud to be able to fit into it.
Well done.
And the other thing I would like to say is, sad day for not only Indian cricket, but world cricket as well. MS Dhoni has decided to retire, and Suresh Raina has joined him as well. So I think, Indian cricket has lost two very, very good players. But I mean, I guess this was coming. The last innings that Dhoni played was in the 2019 World Cup in the semi-finals. It was turning, that innings was turning out to be that kind of Dhoni special that we expect of him, but heartbreaking run out there by Martin Guptill, and and I think it was coming, but I guess he's picked a good day to retire, given that today is the Indian Independence Day. So happy Independence Day to all our Indian viewers, and belated happy Independence Day to all our Pakistani viewers. So I mean, do you want me to kickstart with who I think is better?
Yeah, maybe or maybe just give a 30-second brief on why not some of the other bigger names,
sure.
Like the likes of Ricky Ponting and Fleming, and
Certainly. So I think in terms of captaincy, right, Richie Beno, I think, once said that captaincy is 90% luck and 10% hard work. And I think that's true to a certain extent, in that captaincy really depends on the team that you've got. So if you've got a brilliant team, your results as a captain will be spot on. So that's why I would think someone like Ricky Ponting and Graham Smith, not necessarily, you'd consider them to be brilliant captains, or at least I wouldn't consider them to be absolutely brilliant captains in the way that Dhoni and Ganguly can be considered. Like Ponting had McGrath, Brett Lee, Shane Warne. In the batting, he had Hayden, Gilchrist, Langer, Simons, Michael Clark. So, there was a very settled team that he inherited. And then it was very easy from then on for him to, win the World Cups that he did, win test matches in India, so on and so forth. So similar with Graham Smith. I mean, he was made a captain at a very young age, but then he also had the support of Jack Callis, Sean Pollock, Alan Donald, all those guys, when he started out. And then later on, he had Amla, De Villiers to support him. Yeah. But I think Ganguly and Dhoni, both of them, the players that debuted under their captaincy, were primarily because of the efforts of their captaincy, because of talent identification. And then the way they maneuvered some players, tried to get the best out of them. I don't think any other captains that I've seen in my time, they had that kind of impact. Hence, we can keep this focused on Dhoni and Ganguly.
So,
Sorry, I should also say, I think Misbah as well, to a certain extent. So I would say, the captains we haven't considered are, Ponting, Smith, and Misbah,
I
because
think,
again,
yeah.
Misbah came in at a time when, Pakistan cricket was really struggling. And, for 5-6 years, he ensured that there was a nice, stable, stable base, a stable team. They won lots of games. So I think that was a very unprecedented thing for Pakistan cricket, to have very little controversy, win, do well home and abroad. And so that's why Misbah as well. But again, not.
I think he was really good in Test cricket, but his white ball captaincy
Yeah,
skills were a bit too defensive for me.
yeah.
Yeah. I think
Similar
if
to
you,
Smith, maybe.
yeah, I
Similar to
think
Graham
one
Smith.
last honorable mention from me would be to Brendon McCullum. I think he,
Yeah,
for the
Yes.
brand of cricket he played with that team,
Yeah.
that New Zealand team. I think obviously Stephen Fleming was a very good captain, but the way Brendon McCullum transformed New Zealand, always with a with very limited resources, making a team that
Yes.
reached a World Cup final. I think even the recent team that reached the World Cup final, a lot of those players, likes of Kane Williamson, Ross Taylor, Tim
Yeah.
Southey, Trent Bolt, all kind of groomed under Brendon McCullum. And even teams like England who've started playing very aggressive cricket, they've been inspired by that team.
Exactly.
So although he may not have had the best results, but it's a specific brand of cricket that he started playing, which I think is very, very commendable.
Completely agree. I think I would consider him to be a better captain and tactician than someone like Ricky Ponting. I completely slipped my mind that McCullum had this
No,
impact
but
on world cricket.
I think New Zealand always punches above their weight. Like historically, like Stephen under Stephen Fleming, like you guys mentioned, they always like were there in the. If you look at World Cup and stuff, getting to the finals, and they did not have any individual superstars. And I even remember the 1992 World Cup. Again, they were like one of the favorites.
Yeah.
And I think they've always been a very small nation, but I think they're very. The players are very fit. They're very physically fit, and they're very. You start with a lot of different sports, so I think they're generally a very competitive nation, and they've always kind of punched it above their weight when you compare to some of the larger England or South Africa or Australia. So, anyways, let's start with the actual debate. Who do you want to go first? What do you want to start?
I can start. I mean, I can start briefly, and then I'd like to hear your thoughts as well on who
Yeah,
do you
sure.
think.
So start.
For me personally, when I think about captaincy, I kind of think of it in three ways. So you've got talent identification, bringing in the right players with the right skill set for your team. You've got communication / man management, right? And then you've got your on-field, your on-field tactical decisions. And actually, no, I'll add one more to it, and that's creating the culture, the team culture, the brand of cricket that you play. Right. So I think there are these 4 key pillars to captaincy. And I would say that Sourav Ganguly for me ticked boxes ticked all those 4 boxes. MS Dhoni as well, he certainly ticked all those boxes. And MS Dhoni's, I know his statistical records as captain significantly better than Sourav Ganguly. Obviously, Dhoni's won the ODI World Cup, the T20 World Cup, and the Champions Trophy. But I think where Dhoni kind of falls down is when India were playing away from home, especially in test matches. And I think his captaincy style there didn't quite suit what was required. And, he didn't quite adapt to what was required at that point. So in 2011 and then 2012, we played 4 test matches in England and Australia respectively. And we lost 8 on the trot.
Whitewash,
yeah.
It was a complete whitewash. It was a
I think he lost at home to England as well, right? I think that was the last
course,
series they lost at home.
Yeah, in 2012 as well. So I mean, for me, Ganguly, has won games abroad, has won games at home. Obviously, under Dhoni, India's home record was outstanding, better than Ganguly's. But I always put more, more kind of importance. I give more importance to, away records and, the win away from home.
Yes.
Obviously Ganguly created a different kind of culture. Before Ganguly was captain, Indian teams were never known to be aggressive. Indian teams never won away from home. We didn't know how to play, fast bowling, but Ganguly changed that. So for me, just on those bases, I would say Ganguly is probably the better captain. I don't know what you guys think. I've got more points, but I first want to know your opinions, and then we can, maybe have more discussions.
So I can go next. So again, I think it's a very difficult debate, right? Ganguly versus Dhoni, and no disrespect to any one of them. I think both of them are great captains. And what we were discussing here is like who's better. Agree with Gaurav. When Ganguly came in, I think around 99, 2000. By at that time, India team wasn't known to perform overseas. So I think he created that culture and he got that competitive nature where India started performing well overseas, especially in like South Africa, England, and these kind of conditions. But the way I look at it, he did get a very good team. Like the kind of players, especially the batting talent that Ganguly inherited, they were quite like you had Sachin Tendulkar, who was probably the best batsman in the world at that time, early 2000s, along with Dravid, Ganguly himself, Lakshman. So all of them were like kind of coming towards, like they had been playing for 3 to 4 to 5 years. So they were pretty well settled, a very strong batting lineup along with Anil Kumble and a couple of other bowlers. So India had a very decent team, and obviously he did very well with them. He kind of, gelled the team together, got in a couple of young talents, like again, Gaurav mentioned, I think Yuvraj Singh and Sehwag were probably the two main players he introduced into the Indian team. And they really became a fighting unit. So I think he did very well. And again, the thing when you compare Ganguly to any other captain, Dhoni, if you compare to any other captain, he's probably on par or if not better. But I think what Dhoni has done is just phenomenal, right? He's literally won every single thing which is out there to win. Plus, like, there's very little room for criticism. So when I look at Dhoni, I just see it not just as a cricketing captain, but overall, if you look across different sports, he's probably one of the greatest captains, right? He just transformed the Indian team into a unit where they're physically very fit, where they've won games from losing situations, and the way he has led the team, right? His ODI record is phenomenal. Like 50 ODI average as a wicket keeper is just unheard of. And the way he batted under pressure, the way he stayed calm, like in crunch situations in big games, um, it's just phenomenal. And again, if you go towards talent identification, I think he's much better at that when you compare it to any other captain and Ganguly. Like, the kind of decisions he took when he got initial captaincy, he was like, and he had a long-term thinking, right? So he kind of got captaincy, and in the first 1 or 2 years, he made decisions like dropping Sehwag and a couple of other senior players just based on their fitness and their fielding, because he thought this is not in the long-term interest of the team, and he kind of trusted in players like Virat Kohli, Rohit Sharma, initially, and they didn't perform that well for the first 12, 18, maybe even longer. But you look at them now, Rohit Sharma, look at his record for the first 3 or 4 years. If it was any other team, and I can tell you for sure for Pakistani team, he would have never come back after those 2 or 3 years where he was pretty average, right? Like we used to say he's like a poor man's Umar Akmal. To now, like people saying he was the greatest ODI player of all time. So I think it's just due to like the trust and the support he had from the senior management from Dhoni. Is just phenomenal. Like the players he kind of created, and it's just given in something to India long term, right? Even when he resigned from captaincy after like 8 or 10 years, like the first couple of years, like he would be calling the shots on the field with Virat Kohli with him. So like Virat Kohli obviously trusted him. And again, I was looking at this record across three formats because we were discussing everything, and I think MS Dhoni has actually won most amount of games if you compare it to any other captain. And I'm going all the way back to Clive Lloyd's, Ricky Ponting, Steve Waugh. So he's actually won more games than any of those players across eras and across formats. And again, like I mentioned, he's won an ODI World Cup, he's won an ICC Champions Trophy, T20 World Cup, which I don't want to talk too much about. And under his captainship, India was ranked #1 Test team for a number of months. I do agree. His overseas record is probably the only thing, Test record again, where Ganguly is slightly ahead of him. And again, I kind of give it to that, like the era we're talking about, 2011, 12. That was probably a rebuilding phase for India. There were a lot of new names, like Sachin, I think, had recently retired. He was like towards the end of his career. Virat Kohli, Rohit Sharma, a lot of new guys were coming into the team, and every team kind of goes through that rebuilding phase, right? You can't just have like all these great players retiring and teams still kind of maintaining their same kind of strength. And that happened with Australia, that happened with South Africa. So all teams go through those phases. So for me, I think both of them are great captains, but Dhoni is just miles apart. I think if you compare era-wise, so probably Ganguly was top 2 or 3 captains across the world at that time. But for me, Dhoni probably comes as top 3 captains of all time. He kind of compares, for me, like to Imran Khan we had back in the 80s, 90s. and like Clive Lloyd for the West Indies, right? So he's one of the greatest of the games across all times, and I think he's just won, not just won everything for India, like the kind of culture he's created in the team, the way they are like so much more fitter. Like we never had cricketers with six packs before, like what's happening with like Hardik Pandya, Virat Kohli, all these guys, having a proper protein diet, having a dietitian, looking after themselves. No one ever did that. Like people used to say care about batting as long as you score runs. Who cares about your fitness? So I think he's kind of given this culture to Indian team, which is a long-term thing, and now this is obviously going to benefit Indian cricket for the time to come. So again, hats off to one of the greatest captains. Not ideal playing against him because I think Pakistan mostly ended up on the wrong side. But my full respect. A thorough gentleman, very down to earth person. All the cricketers from the opposing team, whoever talks about him, says that he's a gentleman off the field and on the field. And you can't say that about a lot of great captains. I know some of the Australian captains like who were very aggressive and who would go and do different sort of things. But Dhoni was not just a great player, but I think a great gentleman of the game.
I think it's very close. Without being very diplomatic, I think Dhoni shades it in the end for me. Right, you can argue that he had a much better team, and hence he had more silverware. And that at the end, you have to look at that. He pretty much won everything during his time as captain. Ganguly only got half a Champions Trophy, but and of course, the team that Dhoni had with Sachin, a young Kohli, Dhoni himself, Zaid Khan, Harbhajan Singh. So that was a very good team, 2011, 2012. But it's still, if you look at it on paper, it wasn't an extraordinary team like India is today, probably. There was still not, they're probably still number 3 or 4 in the world ranking wise. But he kind of took, got the best out of them consistently when it mattered. And I think the one thing that I think really stands out for me is his performances in pressure situations. Not just personally with the bat, we all know about Dhoni, the finisher. I mean, we can go on and on about the amount of times he's helped India win. Unfortunately, it just so happens that his last game was the one time he couldn't do it. But even as a captain, while fielding, there were so many times when even when India were getting smashed, you would never see him, the camera was always on him and he was never aggressive or shouting or, taunting to his players, where you would see a lot of captains, even Ganguly, apart from that whole thing he did at Lords, there were so many other times where he lost his cool and you saw him kind of, not being himself, he got into so many fights with umpires and other captains, but Dhoni never did that. He's always, stayed away from all that. And the one thing he was very good at, and obviously that wasn't the case in Ganguly's time, but he was very good at DRS. I think he has a computer in his mind or something where he could track the ball. His reviews were insane, and that's something that nowadays is very, very important in a captain. And sometimes you do use your DRS tactically, but I think I hardly remember Dhoni ever getting it wrong. So he was phenomenal in that. The one thing I would say in Ganguly's favor, you can say Dhoni's away record is bad, but I don't think Ganguly's is as good as people make it out to be. Because he didn't win a lot away from home. He drew a series in Australia, which is a big thing. I think it was him or Kumble, they drew a series in England. But that's it. He didn't win in Australia. Neither did Dhoni.
We won in England in 2007 when Dravid was captain.
Yeah, you won 1-0. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, that was taking the team that Ganguly had built.
But you can't credit.
Yeah, but you can't. Yeah, you can't say that, right? Just one last thing I'd say in Ganguly's favor actually is that 2001 home series win against Australia.
Yeah.
Because that was a turnaround point, because before then that Australia was invincible. Nobody could come close to them. They were 15 consecutive games unbeaten or something.
Home or away. It didn't matter. The conditions didn't matter.
Exactly. So I think that win, and you can argue that was mainly because of Dravid and Lakshman, but that win kind of made us believe that, okay, Australia aren't that invincible. Yeah. And maybe that's down to Ganguly and his captaincy. And then when they went away to Australia and they drew a series, which is a big achievement, they didn't win, but they still drew. So I think that those two things go in his favor. But overall, you have to look at the bottom line. Somebody who's won it all and a fantastic player himself. It has to be MSD.
I mean, I agree with all the points that everyone's made, but just coming back to, Ganguly and his talent identification. I think there's been, I think both of you all have talked about Dhoni and the players that he's brought to the fore. I agree, Kohli made his debut under Dhoni's captaincy. Jadeja, Ashwin, we're seeing
Mhm.
we're seeing
Rohit Sharma
the
was there as well.
benefits. Rohit Sharma also, yeah, 2007 World Cup.
Well, if
Rohit
not if
Sharma
not
was great.
Sharma, the Sharma is the middle order, but Sharma the
The
opener was
opener was
Dhoni's
Dhoni.
time.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I agree. I agree that we've named 3 or 4 players who are key to Virat Kohli's team, right?
Yes.
But if you think about what Ganguly did and you think about the players that debuted under him,
Mhm.
you had MS Dhoni himself. And let me tell you a story about MS Dhoni. It wasn't that some selector found MS Dhoni. It
Mhm.
was Ganguly who heard about him and
Uh-huh.
said, no, you know what, he's scoring so many runs and the way he scores his runs is incredible. Let's bring him into the team. I mean, you wouldn't have at that time selectors that would say, oh, look, they would probably say, look at his technique. So
Yeah.
unorthodox. Look
Yeah.
at his keeping.
Like
It's
for
very,
Vadar.
very unorthodox. Yeah, वो बोले, they would say, it doesn't make sense. And at
Yeah.
that time for a captain, at that time I think a captain had more, say in selection.
Say. And he was quite
Um,
like established captain as well, right? So he
exactly.
had like
So in
respect of the
2004 is
selectors.
when Dhoni debuted. So
Mm.
you can say that Ganguly saw something in Dhoni, and then
Yes.
not only brought him in the team. Dhoni failed in the first couple of games, but then Ganguly said, "No, I know the talent you have. I'm going to bat you
Mm.
at 3." And
Yeah.
the rest, as you know, the rest
Yeah,
is
I
history.
remember that match very clearly.
Yeah. And
It
Exactly.
was against
So
I was
Pakistan with
reading an
his
article as well.
big
So I
hairstyle.
was reading an article
yeah,
which said like Ganguly had this policy where like he believed that before debuting for India, a player had to play at least 2 seasons of domestic cricket,
yeah,
and then once he's debuted, like he has to get at least 5 chances. You can't just give him like a couple of chances
yeah.
if he fails. So I think that
Fair
was a
enough.
very kind of good initiative, and that kind of
Exactly.
really support, especially when you're like a newcomer into the international arena. You might just be very nervous, right? And
Yeah,
if you know you're
yeah,
going to be
true.
playing at least 1 or 2 series, you're going to
Yeah,
get like 5 chances. That kind of
yeah,
gives you the time to settle into the team and
true,
actually like show
true.
what you have. So I think
Exactly.
that
And
probably worked for a lot of players.
yeah, and then so that's MS Dhoni,
Hmm.
identified by Ganguly, and now
Yeah.
we're talking about him as the best captain, and that was
Yes.
he was identified
Yeah, he
by
was
Ganguly.
identified
But
with Ganguly. Yeah.
let
And
me
then
tell you this: the Dhoni that came in 2004 2005 is not the
of
Dhoni
course,
now.
no,
That
no,
credit
no,
has to
Yeah.
go to Dhoni himself.
Dhoni. I
He
agree.
would not
I
have said
agree.
this guy is going to be a captain in
Yeah.
five
No,
years'
no,
That
no.
couldn't
time.
I
speak. Like
agree.
his pal was like literally till his shoulders. He was a completely
वो
different
यार वो तो
human
नहीं
being.
होना था, but just the fact that he said, okay, this guy, I know he's unorthodox, but I
Yeah.
can see something that he can score runs, so
Exactly.
we'll
That's
bring
what
him in,
matters, right?
right? And then let's talk about Virender Sehwag. Again, Virender Sehwag was brought into the team as a number 8 batsman who can bowl off spin. Who got him to
Acha.
open? Sourav
Mm.
Ganguly. And again, we know the impact that Sehwag, especially in the Test match arena, had on
Mm-hmm.
batting, on opening the batting,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because of
But
it, saw the likes of David Warner and Chris
Mm.
Gale, doing well in Test matches. And then you had Yuvraj Singh,
yeah,
right? Who,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that Ganguly might have identified
But
him
I think he was very strong. Like under 19 Indian record, he was like the
exactly.
top performer. So he
Yeah,
was
he
like
was the top performer. He got him in, and straight away. I mean,
mm.
Yuvraj Singh started performing straight away. That
Yes.
that NatWest, NatWest series against
Mm-hmm.
England, the final, we had to
Yes.
chase 325
Mm-hmm.
at Lords. I mean, that was unheard of.
Yeah, that's
No
true.
one, especially from the subcontinent, no
Mm-hmm.
team had the
Uh-huh.
guts to be able to do that. And it was
True.
only down to Ganguly and his kind of his mindset that he
Mm-hmm.
instilled in guys like Mohammad Kaif and what do you call it, and Yuvraj Singh,
Mm-hmm.
that we were able to achieve that. We were able to chase that down. And then you come to Harbhajan Singh. Again, when Harbhajan Singh came into the team in that
Mm-hmm.
2001 series against Australia, I
Yes.
don't think he had a good time in the first maybe couple of innings he played. But then
Yeah.
that game,
Mm-hmm.
that game that he played turned around.
Mm-hmm.
Again, when Dhoni became captain, he could rely on Sehwag, on Harbhajan Singh, on
Yes.
Yuvraj Singh, and on Zahir Khan. Again,
Yes.
Zahir Khan was someone who came debuted under Ganguly's captaincy.
Mm-hmm.
Irfan Pathan,
Yeah.
Irfan Pathan in 2004, that hat trick. Obviously, India didn't win that game against Pakistan, but
Mm-hmm.
India won the series in
Yes.
2004. They won a Test series in Pakistan.
yeah.
So, I think talent identification wise, Ganguly was better, right?
No,
Then
but
it
I would
comes to
disagree with that
building.
because if you compare what Dhoni has done, like he's got obviously Rohit Sharma, Virat Kohli,
Yeah,
Jasprit Bumrah, and all of these players are top in the world, like number one. So if you compare for the man for man, I would say Rohit Sharma ahead of Sehwag, Virat Kohli ahead of any Indian cricketer ever, So you have
Using
Bumrah
Sachin.
better than any Indian bowler,
But
fast bowler ever.
you're
So
forgetting Dhoni. You're forgetting Dhoni. Dhoni, we are saying, is the best captain identified by. Anyways,
तो वो तो
no,
फिर
I
he's
agree.
like
I agree. I'm
mm,
saying that मेरे हिसाब से, that's my opinion. The
yeah
impact that these players had on
mm,
in during Dhoni's captaincy,
yes
even beyond Dhoni's captaincy,
mm,
and in world cricket, I feel
I'll tell
was
you. I'll tell
significant.
you the
And
problem.
one other
But
thing, sorry, one other thing that I know you mentioned, Uzair, you mentioned the
mm,
Dhoni, you know, in the, I think it was 2008, 2009 DB series against Australia, where he said, I'll rotate, you know, I'll rotate the three senior batsmen,
yes
Sehwag, Sachin and Gambhir. I'll
mm,
rotate them because, you know, we need to save some runs in the field. I agree
yeah
that he bought in a different kind, but
mm,
to that point as well, in the 2011 and 2012 series against England and Australia, the
mm,
bowlers that we had Ishant, we had
mm,
Bhuvneshwar Kumar, we had Umesh Yadav,
yes
right? We had these three players. Look at
mm,
the stark difference between these three bowlers in 2011-12 and 2015 onwards when Kohli became captain.
yeah
Dhoni was great at a lot of things, but he wasn't amazing at driving that fitness agenda. All of that
yeah
has happened since Kohli took over as captain.
mm-hmm,
See
mm-hmm.
the fitness of these players. I mean, Umesh Yadav, he's got six pack abs, man. He didn't have them
Ah,
in, you know, he was
mm,
athletic, but he didn't
yes
have that kind of,
ah,
that kind of
mm,
fielding ability even
yeah,
in
yeah
2011 and 12. Ishan
mm,
Sharma, see where he's gone in the last 2 years.
yeah
So I disagree that Dhoni had that impact. Whereas, you know, Ganguly, obviously at that time, fitness wasn't a big thing, but
mm,
he developed that killer instinct,
mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah he did
What Dhoni had to do was Dhoni had to sit back because he
mm.
had Sachin, Sehwag, you know, Ganguly, Dravid. He had these guys to captain, so he could chill, he could
No, but
relax,
they
he
all
had to
retired
look
in the first
after.
but they all
two or
retired.
three
Yeah.
years of his captainship, right?
Wait,
He didn't really win
Sachin,
much with them.
Dhoni became captain in 2008, 2007, 2008.
2007, right? And all
Sachin
of these
retired
guys
in
retired by 10,
2000.
11.
No, Sachin retired in 2011-12.
Huh.
Dravid also retired in 2011,
Mm-hmm.
and Lakshman retired in 2009, and Ganguly retired in 2008. He
Yeah.
also had Kumble. He also had
Mm-hmm.
Harbhajan. So he
Mm-hmm.
had a very strong senior
Uh-huh.
team with him. The other
Yes.
thing is, Dhoni had incredible coaches. Man,
Mm-hmm.
the first
Ganguly had
proper
Greg
coach,
Chappell, man. What are you talking about?
Greg Chappell.
Greg
Come
Chappell.
on, he was a shit coach. Dhoni had Gary Kirsten, and then that was followed by Duncan Fletcher. So Dhoni
So,
had
भाई
the
वो
better
great cap
support
coaches
structure.
बने because India won stuff under them, right? Otherwise, who had heard Gary Kirsten was an average South African player, or Duncan Fletcher
Yeah,
तो पता नहीं.
Gary Kirsten, after going with India, he went to South Africa and he made them the #1 test team as well. So ऐसी
Mm-hmm.
कोई बात नहीं है that Kirsten was an average coach. He just wasn't as flashy as some of the other coaches you've seen,
Mm-hmm.
right? So ऐसा नहीं है. Ganguly had more turmoil to deal with on the
Yeah.
field and off the field.
Uh-huh.
So, you know, those are some of the points in my opinion. I mean, tactically, both were equally good. Both were very instinct driven. You know,
Yes.
both had a good game sense. So both were equal there, right? So I would probably,
The
again,
only the, the one thing
See,
I'd
then
say
for yeah.
is that I don't remember Dhoni ever calling it wrong after winning the toss in a World Cup final, electing to field and then conceding 360 runs.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Uh,
I mean, you're always going to remember that. But just the fact that we reached the 2003 World Cup,
By
and
beating
got
Kenya in the
thrashed.
semi-final. By beating Kenya
beating
in the
Kenya,
semi-final.
beating Kenya, destroying Pakistan, destroying the famed bowling attack. Um, so yeah, I
That
think
was at the
वो
end
तो
of his
खैर
career.
पाकिस्तान की
Anyways.
कोई भी टीम हो इंडिया की बी टीम पे हरा देगी वर्ल्ड कप में तो we don't want to play. We don't want to
No,
beat
but
India. We are friendly.
back to, I mean, you made some very good points for Ganguly. I agree. But look, the point on turmoil and this and that, I mean, that's more also to do with Ganguly's personality. Like we mentioned Greg Chappell, you know, he had a big altercation with him. During Dhoni's time, there was nothing. I mean, there was stuff about, obviously, there was a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, you know, Sehwag and, you know, people moving on and this and that. But he had to take those big decisions, right?
yeah,
I mean, you've just won the World Cup with such big players, and you just ask him that that's your time has come, and that's something very difficult to do, especially in the Asian culture where you need the big players to kind of go on. I think the one player who got that respect, rightly so, was Sachin, just because he was Sachin. But towards the end of his career, I mean, we were all just waiting for him to get that 100, right? And then that came
took him
in
like a
like
year or so.
exactly. So he apart from Sachin, he had that in him to take the brave decisions of moving players on when he felt their time was up.
Yeah.
And that's why now they've got the likes of Dhawan and Sharma and stuff, because he gives them that space to develop and grow.
I agree.
So
I
you
mean,
can't. just say that he had senior players, but he also was responsible for ending their career, which I think worked well for India in the
Ending
long
their
term.
careers.
Yeah, no, not ending their careers, but I mean, to your point, he might have. I think Dhoni was great at that. He was great at letting them be. The problem with Greg Chappell at that time was, he wanted to make too many changes, probably for the good of Indian cricket, but he probably didn't get the buy-in from the senior players. He didn't get the buy-in from Sachin or Lakshman, Dravid, and Ganguly, right? So that was an issue. He brought in great players like Irfan Pathan, but then he also destroyed Irfan Pathan's career by asking him to bat at number 3 in a test match, right? He forced that all-rounder tag onto him. Greg Chappell did. I don't think Ganguly was of the opinion that Irfan Pathan should bat at number 3 in test matches, but it was Greg Chappell's idea, and that kind of destroyed Pathan's career. But the one thing that I would say is, I think Ganguly is certainly a better communicator than Dhoni. I think for all Dhoni's positives in terms of remaining calm, in terms of taking a step back, I think there were lots of times where he could have had better communication. I know when Lakshman retired, for example, it wasn't quite communicated to him, properly as to why he was not picked. He was just not picked, and then he said, "Right, let me retire."
Yeah.
There are these things. I mean, Rahul Dravid getting picked in a T20.
Yeah.
That
Did that
happened in
happen?
that England tour.
Yes.
Yeah, well, Rahul Dravid, Rahul Dravid played three T20s against England in
Acha.
2011 before he retired. He got picked there. I don't know why that happened, but he got picked, and he played some incredible shots. I'm just saying that Ganguly was a much better communicator in that sense. If he had to say, right, you're dropped because of so and so, I think Dhoni had some issues. Even when Dhoni was captaining, right? If things weren't going well in a test match, for example, let's talk about 2011, 2012, England and Australia. Dhoni would just be there. He would let the bowlers, decide themselves what they wanted to bowl, what they wanted to do, right? Whereas if you had Ganguly or even Kohli now, right? Ganguly and Kohli would go up to the bowler and say, look, what do you want to
No,
do?
man, you can't do that. You can't. The amount of times we've seen on stump mic, इधर से डालो, उधर से डालो,
In
आगे
ODIs,
निकलेगा, टांग निकालेगा. The amount of Dhoni reads the batsman, reads the play, and then he
I am
gets him out like that.
I'm saying in ODIs and T20s, Dhoni was significantly, I mean, T20s we can't talk about, but Dhoni was significantly better than Ganguly in ODIs. All over, right? He had that mindset. He understood. His mind worked like a computer, like you said before on the DRS stuff. When it came to a target, his mind worked. He was like, "Ha, theek hai. In the next 10 overs, I need to score 50 runs, but then in the last 10 overs, I need to score 100. I know how to do it." Or when it came to bowling decisions, he was spot on with that. But I'm talking about test matches. I'm talking about selections, when to drop players, when to not. You think that if he had spoken to Sehwag and Sachin and Gambhir in 2008, 2009 to say, look, I'm doing this, I'm rotating you all, those guys would not then come out and say in public that, oh, we're not sure what's happening, we don't know what's happening. These things, I doubt that they never happened when Ganguly was captain, but they've happened a lot when,
No, but the thing is,
Dhoni
like,
was
I don't
captain.
know how easy it is to talk to these players, right? Because obviously they are like been playing for 15 years. They are like considered gods in India, and then you just go up to them, and they might not have taken it well, or like they might have just said no. So he
Nahin,
probably had to just
but
go
the
to the
thing is,
management.
yaar, if you explain to them in the right way,
Yeah.
same thing with Ganguly, right? When Ganguly was captain, he still had to deal with Sachin and Dravid, right? So he still had to deal with those big players. He had to deal with Kumble. So he had to deal with the same players, but maybe I feel like Ganguly was a better communicator, right?
Yeah.
So let me say this. Coming back to my 4 pillars of captaincy.
4 pillars.
Yeah, 4 pillars, right?
Mm.
4 pillars of
Mm.
captaincy. So we've got talent identification. I thought Ganguly did better in that. We've got
I disagree, but anyways.
communication, man management. Ganguly did better in that. Then we've got tactician. I would say they're probably equal in that, in on-field tactician.
Uh-huh.
And then in terms of brand of cricket and in terms of creating a culture, I thought Ganguly did better in that. And there's probably a fifth dimension which I give least importance to for captaincy, and that's your record, as a captain. Obviously, Dhoni beats Ganguly in that
Yeah.
by a big margin. So it's almost like a 3-2 thing to Ganguly. But if you guys disagree, then I mean I have nothing against Dhoni.
Yeah.
This is by talking about captaincy, right?
Mm.
Specifically
See,
for captaincy.
Gaurav, the thing is, all of these are very subjective, right? When you say
Yeah,
talent identification, you think Ganguly did better. I think Dhoni did
Dhoni did
better.
better. Yeah,
Virat Kohli, Rohit Sharma, all of these players coming under him. But something which is factual is the results. They talk for themselves. Like if you have results here in front, like this guy won these many matches or these many tournaments, you
yeah,
can't
true,
deny that, right? And for that, at the end, it comes down to the results. He
yeah,
won the World Cup. ODI World Cup, T20 World Cup, Champions Trophy, you name it, right? So
Yeah.
there's no
Man,
comparison there.
I think the only flaw to that argument is that then you would just say Ricky Ponting is the best captain of all time.
No, but
Because
no,
he,
but we're considering the other things. I mean, you can't really compare Shane Warne, Glenn McGrath, Hayden, Langer.
that I know, but that's the flaw in that argument, and that's why I'm slightly more. Although I've been very pro Dhoni, I think I'm slightly more neutral. Partly for the point that you said, Gaurav. Although I agree they're subjective, but also I think that there are two things. One is this the point I mentioned earlier about kind of shaking up that Australian beast,
Yeah.
of the late '90s and early 2000s. Nobody got close to them. I remember what happened when Pakistan played them, even in a home series. I was in charge. I mean, got out for 55 in both innings. Um, uh, but the other thing is Dhoni never won a Test match against Pakistan.
Not his fault, unfortunately. I'm okay to say that Dhoni was the best. I mean, if you think about it, even in the 2011 World Cup, he had a bad World Cup in terms of batting,
Yeah.
right? And just the fact that in the final, when the pressure was absolutely
Exactly.
on, he came in at number 4. He came in above Yuvraj Singh.
Yuvraj, exactly.
That is
After
unthinkable.
two early wickets.
That's unthinkable, and the only reason he did that
That's
again,
not unthinkable. It's been repeated by one other captain in the past.
and that is
Imran Khan,
Imran
1992,
Khan, of
promoted
course.
himself.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, Dhoni, from a pressure perspective, top notch. Full marks on that. As captain, being tactically aware. The reason he came above Yuvraj was to face Muralidharan. He knew that he could have done better against Murli than Yuvraj could.
Yuvraj.
So he was like, right, let me go in and take the game by its horns. The other thing was 2013 Champions Trophy.
Exactly. Yes, I was coming to that.
I watched that game live. I mean, incredible. England were coasting, 16 runs to win of 20 deliveries, right? Absolutely coasting. And again, just to come back to that, Ishan Sharma at that time wasn't a quick bowler. He would not be bowling 140, right? But just the thought process that Dhoni put into his head, bowl a short delivery. Nothing is happening. Let's try something. Bowl a short delivery and, have a field for that.
Yeah.
He got Morgan. He got Bopara. End of story. And last over bowled by Ashwin, ball was turning big. Nothing that England could do. So again, under pressure situations, 2014 Lords, India versus England. Again, I was there live, right? Ishan Sharma again, all because of Dhoni. Dhoni told him, yeah, why don't you just bowl short? Let's see what happens. I'm going to give you 3 fielders on the leg side in the deep. Just keep bowling short. Yeah. Ishan Sharma took 6-7 wickets. India won that game. Historical win. So just for those reasons, Dhoni's kind of tactical awareness under pressure situations and his braveness, I think, let's give
I
it.
think also you have to lead from the front, and you have to perform as well as a captain. I'm not saying Ganguly's performance as a captain as a batsman was bad when he was captain, but Dhoni was just so much. He was just there.
Kind of here, yeah. Like Ganguly was kind of here, and Dhoni was kind of.
I remember there was this one game. Well, as a batsman going on, but there was one game where it was against South Africa, I think, when South Africa was chasing and they needed like 30 runs with 8 wickets in hand. And they were chasing 200, and this India still won from there. And again, it's down to those situations. It's similar to the Champions Trophy, right? When the opposition is coasting along and makes 1 or 2 changes, and then they just
even his ability to take the game to the last over, right? Exactly. That comes from a point of view of his leadership, right? Yeah. He knows that when he's
thinking longer term, right? Yeah.
Exactly. When he gets one-on-one with a bowler, he knows that he can score that 15-20 runs in the final over.
The same mentality that Misbah tried many times but failed.
Poor guy, man. Poor Misbah. I think we need to do an episode on Misbah and kind of convert all the haters, jo bhi hai pata nahi out there. Anyways, but coming back, I think we've made a decision. I think
with sincere apologies to our fans in Kolkata. To someone who Gautam Gambhir, I think, said some stuff about Ganguly being much better than Dhoni, blah blah, whatever. So with sincere apologies to all the Dada fans. I think
me being one,
yes.
Saying that I initially I thought yes, Dada, but I think Dhoni, in terms of his records as captain, in terms of the pressure situations. Yeah, certainly.
Although personally,
both of them are great captains, right? We are not denying that Ganguly wasn't a good captain. He was amazing, but obviously Dhoni is just something special.
Personally, I do have a soft corner for Ganguly just because of that 2004 series when India came to Pakistan. I think if it wasn't for him, that series would never have happened. I think he was a big. I think so that kind of diplomatic side of things as well. You have to think about it, and he's carried that forward. Right, he's become the head of the the head of the Kolkata Association, now head of BCCI, potentially the next head of the ICC. So
Well, that's
all
a
of those
question mark.
things that kind of shows his kind of statesmanship as well.
Yeah.
We have to see. You have to see where Dhoni leads in next.
Yeah, that's true.
10
You have to
years,
see. Dhoni has those tendencies as well.
Dhoni is going to become the next coach of the Chennai Super Kings.
I think
I was
he'll
thinking
go
chief
into like.
minister of.
I thought he was going to
whatever.
like motorbike riding or something and just.
No, that's my opinion that he's going to carry on playing for Chennai maybe for the next 1 or 2 years.
Yeah, a couple of seasons. Yeah.
Until 2022.
I think the one thing we deliberately didn't cover today was IPL records, because then Dhoni would just.
Would
debate.
Maybe we can do another episode to give a tribute to our favorite MS Dhoni moments or MS Dhoni game. That could include the IPL, and we can do that later. I guess we can let the audience decide as well, who they think is the better captain, who had more of an impact.
So we'll have a poll on our Instagram page.
Vote. Yes, let us know.
And also in the comments on YouTube.
Yeah.
Let us know in the comments, who do you think was the better captain, or was it someone else? Was it Brendon McCullum? Was it Ricky Ponting? Steve Waugh? Shahid Afridi?
I forgot about Shahid Afridi.
I think it's good if you forget about
him.
Doesn't need to be discussed. Although I must say, to reach the semi-final with that team in 2011 was a big achievement.
Yeah, it was a good achievement.
And he was the highest wicket taker, right?
And his T20, his T20 performances were incredible. I know 2009 Yunus Khan was captain, but let me just put it. I have always in our episodes I've always trashed Afridi, but today I'm going to say something nice about him. He was a brilliant T20 player for Pakistan, and Pakistan won the 2009 World Cup because of him.
Yeah, there's no denying that. He was like man of the match, final, semi-final.
There's always an Afridi moment in a Silly Point episode.
Yeah.
Either
trashing him or praising him.
So let us know your thoughts, and let us know if you'd like to say anything else in the future. And let us know your thoughts on MS Dhoni generally. Big announcement today, retiring from cricket. Not unexpected, I guess.
International cricket.
Yeah, and I'm sure he still has a few IPLs in him. So thanks for watching. Like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.